We're seeing right now what looks like a real sea change in U.S. policy. Trump is heavily critical of Zelensky, calling him a dictator, calling on him to have elections, and basically walking away, it looks like, from this proxy war. As a Ukrainian living in the U.S., what is your reaction to all this?
I must say that I vote for Zelensky. Because as many Ukrainians, we really believe that he will shift from this ethno-nationalist agenda to more inclusive agenda, to more inclusive society, and we really believe that he will end this war. But his behavior, I believe, I'm pretty sure that his behavior was not, you know, not appropriate, let's say, in talks with Russia. You can behave like this when you have this powerful nuclear state as your neighbor. But okay, it was his choice. Nobody predicted this full-scale invasion. We were shocked. Everyone in Ukraine was shocked, and everyone and the almost entire society was united around Zelensky because primarily because of the shock. And in the first days of full-scale invasion, I remember I just came from Munich, and I was appointed as the director of one of the institute at the Babyn Holocaust Memorial Center in Kiev. And I was planning my transfer to Kiev, and I had so many plans, and I was so excited. And during one night, everything was canceled. And my first thought was to escape from Ukraine. But why escape? Not only because of the war, but I predicted that we will have this ethno-nationalist shift, and we already have this shift. And it's for me, it's very bitter irony that under Zelensky president, we have so many far-right groups nowadays, even in Ukrainian military, who now openly dispose, neo-Nazi stuff, who sell neo-Nazi stuff, who threaten Ukrainian journalists. So popularity of Zelensky because of this war is of course not very high. We remember that yesterday Kyiv Institute of International Institute of Sociology published these figures about 57%, but it's not about electoral rating, it's about trust.
Hmm.
But when we refer to social monitoring group and to their polls, it's obvious that Zelensky, his electoral rate is 16%. So he's not very popular actually nowadays in Ukraine. And the main reason why, because the situation in the front line is disaster. As you see, the front line moving westward, not eastward. So every single day we are losing territories. Every single day we are losing people. Every single day our, children in Ukraine are suffering, from these rocket attacks, drone attacks. And nobody knows what happened next. And those who want to continue this disaster and this hell, actually, I want to ask every single person who want to continue this: are you ready to sacrifice your life? Are you ready to sacrifice the life of your brother, son, and other loved ones for this crazy idea of victory that can be achieved? Because Russia is bigger, Russia has a lot of resources, Russia has a powerful friends. I mean, China. Yes, for example, I mean, Iran and other countries. I can't even understand who in their right mind actually can believe that Ukraine nowadays can change the situation in the front line and retake all those territories. Who will retake those territories? Many of my friends, many of my relatives are in the army now. They suffer from suicidal thoughts. They suffer from, this desperation, frustration, but nobody can replace them because we have this, problem with mobilization, with, we are run out of manpower. That's why popularity of Zelensky nowadays is really low. But I must say that after this, uh, how to call it properly, this very strange claims from President Trump, many people in Ukraine started to be united around Zelensky, that they want to
Right.
protect him as our leader, because Trump didn't show any research that support, for example, his claim about 4%, for example. Yes, and the main outrage in Ukrainian society is that Ukraine body are not presented nowadays in Saudi Arabia. So
Yeah.
basically, many parallels to Munich conference, when big superpowers just divided, the world on their spheres of influence, and that's why it's the main outrage, because Ukraine suffered a huge of losses, many beloved ones, many people are killed, many wounded. And nowadays, the fate of Ukraine, there is a feeling in Ukraine, and just feeling, that the fate of this small nation in comparison to Russia or to US is designated by these superpowers with these powerful masculine, men who are running those states. And I believe, yes, I believe Zelensky is really fearful about losing his power, because many questions will be asked, addressed to him. For example,
Yes.
about the preparation to the war. Why orphanage were not evacuated? Yeah,
Mm.
they had these plans. They had intelligence information from US and other countries. Why elderly people, vulnerable people, why children were not evacuated from these zones very close to Russia, from Mariupol, from Bucha, Irpin, and other territories? Why Russians so quickly actually take some territories like Skadovsk, and other in Kherson Oblast? Why Mriya, this, plane, wasn't protected, wasn't shifted from this place? Why it was put in danger? You know, so many questions about Zelensky, and many questions about corruption in his inner circle. People are so angry because almost every day, news stories about corruption on the high level,
Yes.
news
Yes.
stories,
Yeah.
people are making money from this war, and who are suffering the most? Working class people, because they
Yes.
don't have money to pay a bribe to to leave the country. They don't have money to pay a bribe for exemption from the military. My relatives who are serving in the army now are from working class. They are truck drivers, they are plumbers. But those my friends who belong to middle class and upper middle class, they found ways how to survive this war. Some of them even sold their apartments. Can you imagine, in order
It's
to pay the
horrible.
bribe? And
To pay
nobody in the
bribes
West.
to pay bribes to be exempt from military service?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or to leave the country,
Or to leave.
legally, so-called legally. They have some medical documents, for example, that they are pensioners, they are invalids, or they have three children, or they have, or they have other reasons. So, and people are paying up to 20,000 dollars. And can you imagine? Most of our pensioners in Ukraine, their pension is 30% of our pensioners, they have a pension $50 per month. So can you imagine the level of corruption in Ukraine? But many are ready to do this and just escape. Like it was, they are using every means to escape, like it was during the Soviet time. Artists, people in sport, they receive the special permit to leave the country. They attend some events abroad, and then they escape. They
Yeah.
don't come back to Ukraine. So they use these international events, some conferences, even some just to pretext how to legally leave the country, because they don't believe. Now we have almost 3 years of full-scale invasion, and nowadays almost we don't have almost dreamers in Ukraine who really believe that we can retake our territories by force. That's why many men nowadays, they decided just survive. just to protect their families. Some of them, for example, they can't even leave their homes, so they quit their jobs, they sit in their homes, and they are
because
trying
they
to
because they don't want to
find
be forcibly drafted into the army. So that's why there's yeah, it's terrible.
exactly.
Listen, just to clarify a few things for people who might not be familiar with the history. So when you were talking about how you voted for Zelensky and were excited by him, you're talking about when he won in 2019, and a big part of his
Exactly.
platform was to take on corruption, but also to end the war that was already going on even before Russia invaded in the Donbass, which began after the change of the coup in 2014, the overthrow of Yanukovych, which the U.S. also was fueling by arming Ukraine rather than pressuring Ukraine to implement the Minsk Accords. And so now here we are. And you've just painted a really sad picture that we don't get at all in Western media. Voices like yours, Ukrainians, are just excluded, and that's across the board. I'm sorry to say, even in progressive media as well. So, what's it been like for you? Being a Ukrainian, living in the U.S., teaching in the U.S., seeing such a one-sided portrayal of your country for a very long time now.
I'm really surprised because, my dream always was to go to US and to be a professor at US university, because US is a country where First Amendment is almost sacred. Where a powerful human rights movement, where a powerful, feminist movement. For me, as a gender scholar, as a Holocaust scholar, it was a dream to be in this, country which is portrayed in Ukraine as a country of freedom, country of democracy, that set an example for so many other countries in Europe, including Eastern Europe, and first of all, Eastern Europe. And when I came here, I was really disappointed. When I follow mainstream media and I follow their cover, for example, of neo-Nazis in Ukraine during the full-scale invasion, I was so surprised. For example, Washington Post, recently, it was several months ago, they published an article about the elite brigade, meaning the Third Assault Brigade, Azov Third Assault Brigade, that launched this, recruiting campaign using, half-naked, models, female, of course, models, to attract more men to the military. And the entire article consisted from the voices of members of the Third Assault Brigade. Voices of women in the military were excluded. Voices of feminists were excluded. Voices of women's rights activists were excluded. So they portray this, you see, elite brigades is recruiting now young men to the military, but they are selling death, and they are selling sexual fantasies to young men who really believe that war is sexy, that war is romantic, that war is full of, adventure, but war is death. War is injurious. I understand why they launched this campaign, because Ukraine is running out of combat volunteers. But I can't understand why respectable mainstream media portray this kind of picture, and they reinforce and they give them a credit, and nothing about sexual harassment we've seen this brigade or in Ukraine military, nothing about jokes and sexist jokes and rape jokes that are circulated in this brigade, nothing about homophobia that circulate in this brigade, because they are very vocal. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, nothing about this. Even their, female soldiers were not asked.
For a video audience, we're showing that Washington Post article on screen, and for people who can't see this audio, it's like a scantily
Clad.
clad woman posing with some for a Ukrainian military campaign. And the Third Assault Brigade you're talking about, that's just a new name for the Azov Battalion, which is founded as a neo-Nazi white supremacist militia.
Exactly.